regulations on running bamboo and add a new Article 4 to establish civil penalties. And there is, of course, no affidavit with this item.
At this point, is there any other mechanism you're aware of that could be used to basically address I would call it the running bamboo problem in this way? Or is this pretty much with the grass cutting ordinance, is this pretty much what we got right now?
This is pretty much what we have now, and I think, I'm not speaking for the board, but I think everybody agrees that it's not a perfect ordinance, but I think it is the best we can do right now if you want to start attacking bamboo and maybe move forward in later years with a little more enforcement on it.
Okay, all right.
If I'm reading it correctly and understanding it correctly, if Supervisor Stork plants running bamboo on his side of the plexiglass and it spreads to my side of the plexiglass and then spreads to Supervisor Alcorn's side of the plexiglass. So it started with him, but under the definition of bamboo owner, each of us are responsible because even though I didn't start it, it spread from my yard to Supervisor Alcorn's yard.
That's probably a true statement, yes.
Okay. I think that's what it says.
Yes.
Bamboo owner, any owner on whose property running bamboo has spread. It means any owner who permits running bamboo to grow or remain on the owner's property, even if the bamboo has spread from an adjoining property or was planted by someone else. So it's not just the original planter of the bamboo who's responsible under the ordinance. Okay, I think there are some instances, I can tell you, in the Braddock District where it's clear
Right.
on whose side of the fence it started. But there are other instances where it isn't. And I think you're going to have, unless the enforcement policy is, if it's unclear, we aren't going to issue violations and fines, and maybe that's the direction to go. But you're going to have situations where Supervisor Stork says I started it and I say he started it. And I think we have to have an enforcement policy to deal with that, which I think the policy would need to be that if it's not clear where it started, we can't make a determination as to which person is responsible.
I 100% agree with you, and like I said, I think my plan is that if we start getting the bamboo complaints, I'm going to head out with my investigator on the first however many we get and take a look at them and try to start setting some protocols and procedures for them.
Okay.
Thank you. I do have concerns that there's going to be a perception that if somebody complains about their neighbor, that their neighbor might be responsible for cleaning up their bamboo that spread onto their property.
Right.
So I want to make sure it's clear you only work on your own property. You don't do anything on somebody else's property.
That's true. So we're not, if we find out that, yes, the bamboo spread from this property to this neighbor, the neighbor needs to understand that the property owner who is the bamboo owner, the violator, is not going to be cleaning up his property. Like I said earlier, if you got bamboo on your property, doesn't matter where it came from, you're going to be a bamboo owner, and we're going to ask you to contain it as part of this ordinance.
Thank you. And, I guess that's part of my other concerns. I mean, if it gets up to $3,000, that's pretty significant in fines. And from what I've read, it can be very complicated to maintain the bamboo. So I do have concerns on the impact of anyone that has the violation and the time frame it takes them to do this and how they can accomplish it. And then I know we had talked a little bit, when there is the fine, what happens to the money from the fines? Where does that go?
So really quickly, bamboo in the spring grows 3 feet. That's the mother plant. The energy goes back down. It sends out a rhizome between 2 and 5 inches below the top of the surface. That rhizome has no stem and no root, so no life-sustaining ability. The energy goes back up and the plant grows to its full height. If you cut that rhizome in August in this area, you kill it. That's it. You don't need anything else, but I'm going to give you some other options that you can use because there's tons of them. And it is actually that simple. We actually use bamboo to mitigate after construction to help regrow people's properties. We put the bamboo and it blocks wind. It holds the water. We can build new native plants, and then pull the bamboo out. It isn't really the monster. It's that we haven't learned how to work with it. Okay, so you can put a swale around your bamboo, and the running bamboo is what we're talking about, not the clumping. You can put a swale around it. It doesn't have to be deep. You can put sand in the swale, which makes it very easy to edge every August around it. That really does contain 98 to 100% of it. We need to actually look at bamboo for what it really is. And I'm not saying let it grow in your neighbor's yard, but I am saying that it is a huge producer of oxygen and absorption of CO2, and it sequesters carbons. It's better watershed service than any other forest except for a rainforest. The leaf litter encourages increased water into underground aquifers. It reduces erosion. It's a wind barrier, a weather-resistant, sound reduction, shade, habitat. Very important to me. It creates a huge amount of anions, which are negative ions, which increase blood flow to the brain, serotonin, relieves stress. Excellent privacy planting for your neighbors that don't like your bamboo. It is good against a traffic barrier. It helps a lot with the pollution. It's also excellent for degrading reforesting degraded land. Two cons: it takes some work to maintain it, and it's associated with poverty. Poor countries have bamboo huts and tiki bars.
Thank you,
So,
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker number 3 is Avril Garnon, and Avril, if you could come on down. Speaker 4 is a video submission. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome.
Okay. I'm Avril Garland. I live in Vienna in Supervisor Alcorn's district. And as representing Friends of Aquatink Creek, we support the Fairfax County Bamboo Ordinance. Running bamboo spreads fast, infests natural areas, and is very difficult to remove. Any initiative to contain it or manage it is welcome. However, Friends of Aquatink Creek recommends, we found an ambiguity. At the moment, the lawn area states no more than 12 inches. Well, what happens to people who want to have a meadow, who want to convert their entire front yard to a meadow? This is not a bed of native plants or vegetables or ornamental grasses. It's the entire front yard. That's the ambiguity. Are people forming meadows going to get a sticky note on their front door saying you've got to cut your unruly weeds? So that should be specified. This point is also being made by the Virginia Soil and Conservation District. Right, that's one point. The other point is the county should provide a very detailed directions of how to remove it. For example, I went through 4 tools before I found this one. This tool slices through a 1.5 diameter bamboo pole in 6 inches, in 6 seconds. It cuts it like butter. But you need to know how there's a lot of various tools. People with weak knees, people with weak wrists, bad backs. There's a lot of different various tools out there that most information doesn't provide this. It's just I wasted an awful lot of time on the wrong tools and using the wrong methods. The other thing is the county could establish is maybe a Google group where people could share their expertise and their know-how, and that they could share their tools. For example, Mr. Weak Knees could do one job, Mrs. Bad Back could do another job, and with a group individually, it's really hard to remove bamboo because your wrist or your back or your shoulder gets muscle fatigue, and after half an hour, you can't do anymore. But within a group, everybody's using different swapping tools, swapping jobs. You can actually clear an infestation very, very quickly. And then you use up the plant supply because all of the leaves are taken out at the same time. And the best time to take more out is in the springtime You let the new bamboo poles reach about 5 feet. And just before it's about to leaf out, when it's using up all its energy, then you cut it. And you do the same for all of the new bamboo shoots. That there's a lot of science behind this. So, well, thank you very much for considering this ordinance, and we hope that Fairfax County will consider doing the same with other invasive plants that are still being sold, go into yards, and then escape into the natural surroundings. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Barbara Ryan, and Barbara has submitted video testimony. And we are now on speaker number 8, Judy Smith. Judy, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I am a homeowner, and I have been struggling with bamboo from my backyard neighbor. That is the source. And of course, in my ideal world, I would like that source completely removed, because as it comes through my fence line, if you can see these, I've been cutting it down like it's been recommended. And all these little baby plants just are so happy because they just pop up all over the place. And then here is a larger picture of a whole stand of roots. You know, they just get big and strong. That previous lady had those big, you know. So, and, you know, it's just the idea. And what I was going to, if I keep trimming mine down, my plant that I want to put other plants in, my area is just going to be filled with bamboo. And I'm just going to be cutting all this bamboo, and I won't have room for my flowers and plants like that. So I would like my neighbor to cooperate with me. And I would like to be able to ask the supervisor for support and also have a landscaper, removal company available to me to talk with. And with my backyard neighbor, may have to go through a lawyer. I certainly don't want that. But we've had issues, and so I don't know how to get him to cooperate, and I don't know how to eliminate my bamboo growing on the property, and I appreciate everything you all are doing. And bamboo is very aggressive, extremely aggressive, and I think the nurseries and the landscapers and all the people involved should not be allowed to buy this plant. It should be banned. The other kind, of course, is fine. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly could support a deferral. I do think we need to move forward with an ordinance. We're appropriately thinking about the potential financial impacts for folks who violate an ordinance. But I think it's important for us to recognize, we heard from a number of them tonight, and I represent a lot of them, people are paying for this now, but they're paying for it because their neighbors planted it, and they're trying to deal with it in their yard, and they're spending hundreds or thousands of dollars or hundreds of hours trying to deal with it, encroaching into their yard. That is absolutely happening now. We want to avoid a situation of potentially creating some people who struggle with the financial implications of this ordinance, and that's a good conversation, but we should remember people are paying now. Just one question, Mr. Wine, and I hate to go back to this demonstration here, but if you show up in response to a complaint and there's a roughly equal amount of bamboo on Supervisor Stork's side of the fence and my side of the fence, do you have any way to tell where it started? Obviously, if there's 100 stalks on my side and 3 on his side, it probably started on my side.
Right.
But if it's roughly equal and there's a lot on both sides, is there any way to analyze the situation and determine who planted the bamboo?
Probably not, and, I'll remind everybody, my staff is not horticulturally trained, or they're not botanists, so
Okay.
we're doing the best we can like anybody. But I would tell you, no, if it's a 50-50 split, I'm really not going to be able to tell.
Okay. Well, I certainly would be open to looking at the fines, although I think the financial burden here for someone who's planted the bamboo is on the mitigation. That's going to be more expensive than the fines, probably, and we can't help that. But I'm uncomfortable with, and I understand why you did it, I'm uncomfortable with this definition of bamboo owner, including someone who was just living in their house and someone else's bamboo or bamboo from the park authority came into their yard, and now they're also on the hook. And I recognize the challenges. You know, I would maybe look at language where we're holding responsible only those people who it's clear planted the bamboo that then encroached. But look forward to more conversation and dialogue about it.
Supervisor Alcorn.
Excuse me.
I'm
The only
sorry.
comment I might have on that is that with everything we do, if it's unpermitted construction and you bought a house and we get a complaint that, hey, there's no permits for this basement, unfortunately, you're responsible. If you buy a property and there's any zoning violation on it, it's the buyer beware. I hate to use that terminology, but we unfortunately explain to people that it's still your responsibility. So
Yep.
I kind of looked at this as falling into that same philosophy that we've used for the last many years when we did this.
Yeah, the difference is this is a new ordinance and we're not grandfathering anyone in, right? So people who are in that situation now didn't know it when they purchased their home, but I understand your point.
Supervisor Alcorn.
Yeah, thank you. Just very quickly, Mr. Wyatt, this code change does not need to go to the planning commission, correct? And it did not.
No.
So I would just point out to my colleagues, this is what it feels like to be on the planning commission. For those of you who don't know, this is basically, you know, you have a public hearing, people show up, they tell you stuff you hadn't heard before, they have ideas that you hadn't heard before, and they tend to be really complicated, challenging issues like this. Not always, but sometimes. So, but I do want to say, I associate myself with Supervisor Gross and some of her comments. I could move forward on this tonight, but clearly there's some issues that need to be worked out across the board. I would also just suggest, and Supervisor Stork, I don't know, maybe this is environmental committee or not, but this is not the last invasive species issue that we're going to be dealing with. So we should probably, as we figure out what we do here, let's be thinking about the future, not just in terms of the code, but also in terms of education, in terms of coordination with Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District and others. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. And I think that's one of the reasons, there's no perfect ordinance, but that's one of the reasons we want to try our best on this one to do as best a job we can, as it is precedent setting, potentially for others. And as Supervisor Gross said, the ordinance is a living document. So if we don't get every word right in this, we always reserve the right to go back and amend it. And that's one of the beauties of the zoning ordinance in cases like this that are untested really out there in terms of what the impact is going to be. Are there any other questions before we close the public hearing and turn to Supervisor Stork for a motion? Any other questions? Okay, Supervisor, at this time I will close the public hearing and turn to Supervisor Stork for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not certain of the date that we want to defer this to, so I don't know if we wanted to pick a date or leave it more open-ended. I'll look to the county executive or somebody to.
We have March board dates. What are the March board dates?
What about March 22nd? How's that sound?
I think a little bit more time is
A
probably
little bit more than
wise,
that? We can
yes.
defer it on March 22nd again if you like, or do you?
I think we do March 22nd.
March 22nd, all right, okay.
Exactly 1 month from today.
See, because when you start getting into April, you're in the budget public hearings, so why don't we try the 22nd, and if it doesn't work, we'll just push it to be past April. I'll get you a date.
Okay.
Okay.
March
Well,
22nd.
Thank you.
I'll go with that. I move that the Board of Supervisors defer the consideration of the proposed amendments to Chapter 119 of the Fairfax County Code to a date certain of March 22nd at 3:30.
3:30, and the chair will second that motion. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? I think the only thing I will say, I think it's clear we're going to address this. The question is making sure we get the language right. So I think this additional time is helpful, and certainly appreciate all the speakers who came out and testified today and gave us great information to refine this and make it more effective as we move forward. So thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion carries. Thank you.